Howdy y'all, Fuzzy Biker here. We are in Panama, Iowa. Memorial Day 2023. Flags everywhere. I bet I've seen 10,000 flags out today. Memorial Day is the day we celebrate the fallen in our wars here in America. Very special day here, very honored day. Anyway, I'm out on the Hot Rod Triumph today, my Bonneville T100. And I thought I'd give you some info on this little hot rod. I just love this bike. I rode it about 140 miles the day before yesterday, and today I've gone about 100 and probably 170, 180 miles already, and I've got I suppose I'm 40 or 50 miles from home, so a little bit of ways to go yet today. But so what is it? We'll start with that. It is an 865cc dual overhead cam parallel twin. Parallel is in a 360-degree crank, so what some of y'all would call a real parallel twin. The engine has 9.2 to 1 compression, which means I can use regular gas without any problems. Puts out about 67 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque. That's about 68 newton meters of torque. Has a 5-speed transmission. This is a 2012 model, by the way. Front brake on this, it's a single disc, 310 millimeter Nissan. And the rear, let's see, it's on this side, is a 255 millimeter single disc Nissan. I think there's dual pistons on the front. Yeah, dual pistons and a single piston on the rear. Tires are a 190/19 on the front and a 130/80/17 on the rear. Looks like she's got Metzlers on her, at least on the rear. Let's see what the front has. Yeah, same thing. I picked this up a year ago. I got this last August. I had it about 5 days. It put about, I don't know, 12 or 1,500 miles on it. Sort of missed a deer and ended up in the hospital for 10 days. So this bike has actually been slid across 100 feet of pavement into a pile of gravel, and you really cannot tell by looking at it. The bike is just tough as nails. It came out of it pretty good. The bag got some damaged. This whole area here was destroyed. You can still see some of the damage in the mirror. But new levers, new cables. The front fender got a little bite, and this whole thing here was gone. I had to replace that and the gauge cluster and all that neat stuff, but thing runs like a champ. It's just tough as nails. Forks are 41 millimeter with about 4.7 inches of travel, and they've got excellent. This thing has excellent feel. We'll talk more about that later. That's 4.7 inches is about 120 millimeters. The rear has about 4.1 inches of travel. That's about 106 millimeters. Wheelbase on this hot rod is 59 inches. It's a long wheelbase bike, especially for as light as it is. That's about 1,500 millimeters. And here's a really important one. I'm going to mention it here because you can see it. 28 degrees of rake, and that's important. We're going to get back to that. It's a very steep angle, you know, a very raked out angle, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. Seat height on this thing, I love the seat height on this, 30.5 inches at 775 millimeters. Very good that way. Very easy to get on and off. Very narrow motorcycle, by the way. You can see that right there. I just love this bike, by the way. Gas tank, 4.2 gallons. What's interesting about that is I thought it was a 3.5 gallon, and I went to fill it up today and I put 3.3 gallons, and I'm doing research to find out, to get this data for y'all, and it's 4.2 gallons, so it's actually quite a large tank. That's 16 liters, by the way. Weight for this thing is 506 pounds, so this is actually heavier, about 6 pounds heavier than the new T100s. The new T100s have an actual 900cc engine and are liquid cooled. Actually produce slightly less horsepower but slightly more torque. So 506 pounds, that's 230 kilograms. What to say about it? Well, let's talk about the engine. Let's start where I like. I love the engine. Probably the main reason I bought the bike was the engine. I drove one of these several years ago in the American form, in the 865 air and oil cooled in the American, Triumph American, and I just fell in love with it. It was so smooth, and it was everything I needed in an engine. It has a very flat torque curve, very even power distribution. It's not peaky, it's very civilized, and it's just silky smooth, just silky smooth, and I just love it for that reason. While we're talking about the engine, I'll mention the fuel mileage. I usually get in the 40s, low 40s. I've been holding it at 60 miles an hour the last 3 days that I've been riding this. I didn't ride it yesterday, but the last couple days. And I got about 51 to 52 on the last tank. And I have a feeling I'm going to get more than that on this tank because I've really been watching it this time. Last tank I hit a couple, I hit the triple digits a couple times. This tank I don't think I've ever even come close. I don't even think I've been over 70 once. So the transmission, anyway, back to that. It's an incredibly nifty transmission. It doesn't like to be shifted softly. It likes to be forcefully shifted. It isn't that it's hard to get in gear or anything like that. It just seems to work better. A quick grab of the clutch and a shift at the same time. And I really love, like with all trans, I mean, look at the quality of that. You know, that is a cast shift lever. I mean, look at the everything. That's the thing about a Triumph, and we'll talk about that more later. So suspension-wise, this bike is really raked out, and I talked about that just a bit ago. When you're driving this, the three areas that I always talk about are the in the garage, in town, and on the highway. When you're in the garage, this thing it's really sensitive to falling over, and I think that's because of the high rake. And you really got to watch where you put your feet, and if the floor is slick, or if you have a leaf or something on there, it can really start to get away from you. I've never dropped it. I dropped it once when I slid it across the pavement, but that's about the only time. But no, so it's kind of a tricky bike in that sense. I've had much worse bikes than this, a couple actually, two that I can think of. But so then around town, so 0 to parking lot, it's kind of, you really got to pay attention. You just got to pay attention, and it's that way, pretty good up to about 35, 25, let's say. Then from 35 to 25 to 45, it gets better, but it's not super stable, and that's actually kind of a good thing. And you use that to your advantage when you have a bike like this, and it's actually built that way for that reason, I believe. So you have that instability. You use that instability to move the bike left, right, up, whatever way you're going to go. Good handling in town for that kind of thing. Works very well. Now, once you get to 50, she really solidifies in handling. She really likes to go absolutely straight arrow. She holds that until from 50 to 70, she's really a straight arrow bike. She doesn't like to swerve around very much. Here's the really interesting part. When you get over 70, this thing just handles like nothing you would believe. It's just, I love this bike on the interstate. I'll go, traffic speeds, keeping up with traffic, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, and it just eats that stuff alive, and it does it without any effort. So I guess we've talked about handling, haven't we? I love the way this bike handles. I just really love the way it handles. Like I said, it's a little difficult in town or at slow speeds, but the payoffs are really great. And then on the normal roads, 50, 60 miles an hour, it's fabulous. And then on the interstate or higher speeds, it's just amazing. So seating position, it's got this flat, the normal flat Triumph seat. When you're sitting on it, your feet are, in this case, it's kind of a tight spot. Now, I've got 30-inch legs, inseam, so I think if my legs are any longer, it might be more of a problem. But so your buttocks is here, your knees are here, so you're about halfway. But the nifty thing about this bike is you can slide forward and backwards. Another thing about it is you are leaning forward on this bike, and you are reaching for the bars. And usually I would consider that a drawback, but on this bike that actually works out really well, and I actually like it a lot. I do ride this bike a lot, well, periodically, and I've never thought of it as uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, I think I could take this thing across the country and back and thoroughly enjoy it. When I crashed it, I didn't have the windshield for a while. I am glad I got it back. The windshield really helps cut the wind, really evens out the, hey, there goes a bike. I bet you I've seen a couple hundred motorcycles today. Memorial Day, everybody's got their bikes out, their convertibles, their three-wheelers, they're everywhere. But no, anyway, the windshield helps a lot, and it makes the bike much more enjoyable at higher speeds. Things I've added to it, I put these digital tire pressure gauges on. I just check the tire pressure with my phones. It's got these wonderful bags that came with the bike. This one was, you can see the damage from the crash. I've thought about replacing it, but I never have. They're very large. I can take this thing grocery shopping with ease. Jumping up here, adjustable levers, both the brake and the clutch, which is nice. Very good switch gear. The grips are barrel shaped, and here again they've got that hard soft thing. I don't know how to describe that. I was talking about that the other day with my Zenfield. It's the same kind of a thing, very comfortable to hold on to. The mirrors are silky smooth. This bike holds, going down the road, you look in the mirrors and they're pretty doggone clear. I really like that about the bike. Gauges, it's got a little bit of a meter in here for so trip 1, trip 2, the odometer. There is no fuel gauge. There is a fuel light, and I added this clock. By the way, that's wrong. There is a clock in here too, by the way. Also, I've got an oil pressure gauge, which is, I think that's a really important gauge to have on a bike. I don't know if I have a amp meter light or a voltage light, but I do have the engine light, so I suppose that would work. So high lows, blinkers. Brian Triumph said the best blinkers. It's just the best. The horn, kill switch, start switch. We don't know what this is for. There must have been some gadget, you know, maybe heated grips or something back in the day, 2012. This bike, even though it is fuel injected, you know, it looks like it has carburetors, but those are not carburetors. You know, there's a thing about a Triumph. They're comfortable. Everything works right. Everything's solid. It's just a very good, they're awesome machines, and I just love them. I just love them. Hey, I'm Fuzzy Biker. If it's nice out where you're at, get out there and ride, my friends. Wahoo!